And that's the end of the first half. As the teams head to the locker room, the Spartans lead the Bulldogs by a score.
You guys stink.
Geez, Coach, we're only down a couple of points.
No, I mean you guys really smell. You need to hit the showers. And here, I got every one of you new bars of soap from the Sterling Soap Company. Each bar is artisan crafted using natural ingredients and essential oils. They also have shave soaps, colognes, beard balm, and a whole lot more. Now get in there.
But Coach, we have another half to play.
I don't care. I can't stand to be around you.
A few minutes later.
All right, bring it in tight. You guys are still playing terrible, but you're smelling great out there. Now listen, you're going to need to stock up for the rest of the season. We got a lot of tough games left. So go to sterlingsoap.com after the game. That's STIRLING soap.com. You got that?
Yes, Coach.
Great. Sterlingsoap.com on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Sterlingsoap.com.
This is Basketball History 101 with Rick Loayza.
Welcome back to award-winning Basketball History 101, part of the Sports History Network. I am your host, Rick Loayza, and this is the podcast where we bring to life some of the forgotten stories from basketball history. We are bringing old school basketball to a new school audience, and today we bring you the story of Thump and Bump. If you do not know what I am talking about, that is okay. This was not the most famous era of NBA basketball. Certain teams earn a nickname for a certain era in their history. For example, if I say the Showtime Lakers, you immediately think of Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and James Worthy, and the 5 championships that they won during the 1980s. If I say the Bad Boys Pistons, then you immediately think of Dennis Rodman, Bill Laimbeer, John Salley, Vinnie Johnson, Rick Mahorn, and of course their leader, Isaiah Thomas. And if I say Run TMC Warriors, then your thoughts go back to Tim Hardaway, Mitch Richmond, and Chris Mullin as they were tearing up the NBA scoring-wise. But Thump and Bump is admittedly a bit more obscure. It was the teaming of Charles Barkley and Rick Mahorn on the Philadelphia 76ers. The simple reason that they are not better known is that they never even came close to winning a championship. The two players were only teammates for 2 seasons, starting in the autumn of 1989 and ending in the spring of 1991. It was short-lived, but a whole lot of fun to watch. Barkley arrived in Philadelphia in 1984, where he was drafted with the 5th overall pick in the 1984 NBA draft out of Auburn University. And by the way, he was drafted 2 spots behind Michael Jordan. Now, by the time that 1989 was rolling around, Barkley was entering his 6th season in the NBA and was desperate to win a championship. Rick Mahorn had just won a championship in 1989 with the Pistons, but was traded as part of a convoluted transaction based on the fact that there were 2 brand new teams entering the NBA, and they were about to have the expansion draft, where they got to pick players from the existing teams. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of all the transactions involved, but I will say this. When the smoke cleared, Mahorn was on the 76ers alongside Charles Barkley. The weirdest part about it is that both players were primarily power forwards. Normally, when you have an all-star player at one position, you do not acquire a high-quality player at the same position. However, Barkley could slide down to the small forward if needed, and Mahorn could also play center if needed. So there was some flexibility there in being able to have both of them on the court at the same time. The hope for Barkley and the 76ers is that Mahorn would bring a bit of that bad boy attitude to Philadelphia. Barkley was already a very physical player, and to have a partner who was even more physical was music to their ears. Now, the two of them together would dominate the paint in the early 1990s. Both were aggressive rebounders and defenders. Anyone crazy enough to drive to the basket against these two were taking their careers into their own hands. Barkley and Mahorn had every intention of fouling hard and forcing teams to shoot from the outside because the paint was their territory. I remember that era when someone made an official NBA licensed t-shirt that displayed caricatures of Barkley and Mahorn with the words Thump and Bump. The whole idea was that this would be a bit of the bad boy 76ers. But was it effective? Did the combination of Barkley and Mahorn actually work? Well, the year before Mahorn arrived in Philadelphia, the 76ers had only 46 wins. The year that Mahorn arrived, they went up to 53 wins. So with 7 more victories, you could say that the acquisition was effective. However, in the second year with Mahorn, they dropped back down to 44 wins. They got even worse. But let's also look at the individual numbers from before Mahorn arrived to when he was part of the team. Barkley's scoring dropped just a tiny bit from 25.8 to 25.2, and his rebounding dropped from 12.5 to 11.5. And I would credit that to the fact that they brought in another aggressive rebounder. Now, the rest of Barkley's numbers were virtually unchanged. As for Mahorn, well, his scoring went up from 7.3 in his final season with the Pistons to 10.8 in his first year with the 76ers. His rebounding also went up from 6.9 to 7.6. But here's the thing that makes it all make sense. Mahorn's minutes went up from 24.9 with the Pistons to 30.3 with the 76ers. That is 5 extra minutes on the court each game. Now, as I said, this completely makes sense because the Bad Boys Pistons were so loaded with talent that nobody played that many minutes except for Isaiah Thomas. Mahorn was often subbed out for Robin for some extra defense. Now, with the 76ers, Mahorn only came out for a break, not for any strategic reasons. So while adding Mahorn definitely improved the team, there were still some key pieces missing if they were going to seriously challenge for the championship. The Pistons were still the kings of the East when Mahorn joined the 76ers, and the Bulls were about to start pouncing and take over the Eastern Conference. And it wasn't just those teams. It was a very crowded Eastern Conference as the New York Knicks were getting better, and so were the Indiana Pacers. As hard as they tried, Thump and Bump was great for some highlights and t-shirt sales, but it was just too difficult to compete in the East with all of the competitive teams involved. In one of the funniest episodes of that era, the 76ers were playing in Detroit, and this was Mahorn's chance to get a little revenge against the Pistons team that got rid of him the year before. As the game went on, the Bad Boys tried to use their old tactics on Mahorn to get Mahorn distracted and angry. It was the same tactics that they used against the Celtics and the Bulls of the late 1980s, but those tactics did not work against Mahorn. Not even a little bit. Mahorn knew exactly what they were doing because the year before, he had been part of it. Mahorn did not let the Pistons get inside his head. He just focused on playing and trying to win the game. It was almost like he didn't even notice what the Pistons were doing with the hard fouls. When the Pistons realized that it was no longer working on Mahorn, they decided to turn it up a notch and try to draw Mahorn into a fight in order to get Mahorn kicked out of the game. In the game, Mahorn had the ball on the left elbow. Johnny Dawkins of the 76ers cuts in front of Mahorn to receive the ball from Mahorn. In the game, Mahorn had the ball on the left elbow, and Johnny Dawkins of the 76ers cuts in front of Mahorn in order to receive the ball from Mahorn. However, Isaiah Thomas was chasing Dawkins. As Thomas was cutting by Mahorn, Mahorn stuck out his hip to knock Thomas off his path and give Dawkins a window to shoot the ball. Now, Thomas did not like the hip check and came back and swung a closed fist and made contact with Mahorn's head. To Mahorn's credit, he did not even flinch. It was so comical. It looked like a small child trying to punch his big brother. Mahorn was a whole foot taller than Thomas. Thomas had to get on his toes just to reach Mahorn's head. Mahorn never even looked at Thomas. And I can still hear the announcer saying, "And Mahorn didn't even flinch." The referees immediately ejected Thomas for throwing a punch, and as Thomas backed away, he gave Mahorn a bit of a smile as if to say, "Hey, I had to try something." Mahorn just smiled in return as if to say, "Yeah, but you're out of the game, and I'm not." The whole thing happened so fast that hardly anybody else even reacted to the punch. Once Thomas backed away from Mahorn, Johnny Dawkins put an arm around Thomas to make sure that he did not go back in for a second punch. The whole thing seemed like Thomas was expecting Mahorn to come after him, like he was baiting Mahorn into a fight, but Mahorn would have none of it. Unfortunately for Thump and Bump, the whole thing ended after just 2 seasons when the 76ers chose not to renew Mahorn's contract. Rick Mahorn ended up playing in Italy for a year for Virtus Romas, where he dominated for a single year before returning to the NBA with the New Jersey Nets. But this time, he was no longer a starter. He served as a role player for his last 7 seasons in the NBA. Barkley did not last much longer in Philadelphia either, as he was traded in the summer of 1992 to the Phoenix Suns, where he helped them get to the 1993 NBA Finals, where they lost to the Chicago Bulls. It has been 43 years since the 76ers last won a championship, and who knows when they will win their next one. It could be a while. Well, thanks for hanging out to hear about the very short era of Thump and Bump. They were not that great, but again, they were fun to watch. Come back next week when we share another story from basketball history. That's next time on Basketball History 101, part of the Sports History Network, the headquarters of Sports Yesteryear. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com to find out more about this and other sports history podcasts. If you like what you hear, please hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts. And check out our page on Facebook. It's called Basketball History 101 Podcast. There you will find short historical posts, and I'll also announce there when new episodes come out. I want to thank my producer and editor, Jacob Loayza. Join us each week as we continue to mine the history of basketball for more great stories from the past. Take care and see you soon.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com. Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, aka the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.